You got your mama's sunshine, you got your daddy's rain. You're like a piece of heaven in a hurricane. And it's bubbling over.
Hey everybody, welcome back. We are back. I guess you didn't go anywhere, but we did. We had a couple of vacations kind of left over for the end of the year, but now we're back. We're back until who knows when, you know. I think my next vacation will be next summer, so it's going to be a while.
I don't think any of us are going for a while. Tom will be. No, none of us are leaving until next summer.
We're in it. We're in it to win it. So thanks, guys, for having patience with us for the last couple of weeks. But yeah, you know, it was nice to have a little rest. It was nice to just. I don't think you guys had any rest, Tom and Dad, but Vince and I did. We did. And you know, you always come back from vacation with a different perspective. Vince went hunting, got a deer, and
yes, I did.
Congratulations there.
Thank you.
We're gonna be feasting at his house at some point. But I went to Disneyland this year. I was thinking it got really expensive, Disneyland, and I was wondering if you know families are gonna stop doing these sorts of things, right? I mean, a lot of families can't go anyway, and it's a strain. I had a little extra money set aside for one thing, and I decided I'm not going to get this one thing. I'm just going to take my family to Disneyland instead, and you do it, and it's fun, and the kids have memories. But you know, I think that in the future we're going to have to start living differently. I think we're going to have to start hunkering down and focusing on what matters. It's funny because we went to Disneyland and then we took the kids yesterday on a hike out at Windwolves, and that was just as fun. You know, it was just, I mean, the kids are running around playing in the woods and looking at tracks, animal tracks, and we're looking at the different flowers.
It's just a different fun, isn't it, Josh? Because certain things price themselves out at one point.
Yeah.
And that never does. Yeah. Going out in nature, going out on a hike, and people can do that all the time now.
What does it cost a family of 4 or 5 to go to Disneyland?
Oh, man. Too much. It's 100. I mean, we got the cheapest tickets we could, and it was like 120, 130 per ticket, something like that. It was insane.
And then you pay extra for the fast pass or whatever it's called?
Yeah, so they started charging extra for fast passes, which they call them lightning lanes now. They changed the name so that they could.
I like that though. That's kind of jazzy.
Yeah, it sounds more exciting. But you used to be able to go and get a ticket for the fast pass, and then you'd come back and it was free, right? But now they charge you, and they it's funny, they had like the stand alone line or the standby line they call it, which is the you didn't buy the lightning lane line. So we were in that line. It said on the ticker, it said 50 minutes, right? For I think it was Space Mountain. And we stayed in that line for 2 hours and 15 minutes, Tom. And what happened was they were stopping everyone, and they were just letting all the fast pass people.
They're just kidding.
So the poorer people have to wait longer.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you're not poor if you're going to Disneyland.
My grandkids, some of my older grandkids, years ago, they asked me a couple of times if I would go in a wheelchair.
Oh, yeah, right. I was almost there, Dad, because that's another thing about Disneyland.
Do the wheelchairs get up front? Don't they get the people
Supposedly, yeah. Supposedly, there's a special spot.
They have a lightning pass, yeah.
I was limping, and I had kind of a bad hip at the time, and they said, would you go in a wheelchair, and we can take you so we can get in the front of the lines?
You're like, it's not worth it.
Well, the reason I brought that up wasn't to brag about going to Disneyland. It was because we've been taught a certain type of success in this world. We've been taught that, you know, getting more things, being able to go to other places that people don't get to go to, all these things, that is what constitutes as success. Right. But as the world changes, and it is changing, I would say pretty rapidly, I would say that our definition of success also needs to change. And like I said, I took my kids hiking yesterday, and to me, that was a successful day with my family. It was fun. We had a good time. We were together. And it was rewarding. And so today we're going to talk about, you know, what does it mean? What does success actually mean to you?
I read on Newsfeed today, a little girl, 3 years old, she redefined the success of Halloween. She asked her parents, said, why can't we just keep the bowl of candy we have and just watch TV tonight? That was her idea of success on Halloween.
That's a time saver.
That's a prudent child.
That's a time saver.
That's an old soul.
She was thinking, man.
Why can't we just keep this bowl? What's going on?
I had a little tot come to my house for Halloween. Debbie and I had to go out of town. We got back just in time to get some trick-or-treaters. He was no older than 3 or 4, Romy's age. Yeah. And he sat there, and I don't know what he was referring to, because he was dressed like a soldier. Are you a soldier? He said, yeah. And so candy, I mean, we had this big old thing, candy. So I gave him 2 big handfuls, and he said, "It's about time somebody got it right." He was 3 years old.
Oh man.
I had to take.
funny.
I had to. Two kids came, and we bought chocolate. I mean, I just told my wife we're going to do the real thing, so we bought chocolate, and so I gave them both a piece of chocolate. The one kid says, "Well, he doesn't like chocolate. He likes candy." I go, "Let me teach you exchange theory. Reach in his bag and grab that, and then put it in yours and take a piece
Trade.
of candy and back in." And he goes,
Economics.
"Oh, that was easy."
Oh man.
Economics.
Well, you know what? We're going to talk about probably success today, but I want this to be for everyone, not just for business people, for parents and for employees and spouses. I want you to tweak this in such a way that it fits into your world wherever you're at. And I want to start this off because I got a lot to say. I didn't think I did, but on the way over here, I just jotted some notes down. I think the first thing in regards to success that I would like to talk about is successful people have to be willing to gamble when you feel the odds are on your side.
Risk.
My wife, like the majority of wives, I think, she has a tendency to always play it safe. And that's not my thing. Again, I quit at that time, decades ago, a pretty good job with the union, everything, in order to go full-time in the ministry for $650 a month. Now, back in that day, you can calculate that salary according to the day and age that I lived in, but $650 a month. And my parents squawked. They go, "What are you doing? You have no insurance, no retirement." When we started our school, Tom, it was a risk. People said, "You don't know how to do a school." When we started our church, Vegas, we go on and on. But I don't think there's a successful person out there that has become successful without exercising some element of risk. Do you guys want to say anything about that? I got several things I want to talk about, but
Yeah, I think each of us needs to define what success means to us, and if it's success in work, that's a good thing. That's a valid definition. But there's also success in family. There's success in are you living out your values? Are you who you want to be in life?
Yeah.
Are you happy with yourself? Do you go to bed at night stressed and worried, or do you go to bed at night saying, "Man, I'm satisfied. I'm good. I did the best I could today."
Can we just go back with a very simple definition? I mean, again, we're looking from a Christian perspective. Yesterday in my sermon, I had some notes I did not use. But we have to understand that the world out there at large that aren't Christians, they will have a different definition for success than we will. Success, I'll give a couple. It's when we reach our purpose. But if you want to take it into more of a spiritual element, it's when we fulfill God's will for our life in each of the areas. When we fulfill God's will for our life as a father, as a parent, as a career person, I mean, that to me is a very solid definition of success.
I love that you talked about risk too early on, because I think a lot of times we think about success and, in our day and age, we think that there's not, if you just press a magic button or you do this one thing, all of a sudden, whatever that defining success that you talked about is going to happen for you. But when you talk about risk, you're talking about more about what you're losing than what you're gaining. And a lot of times in order to be successful in life, whether it's, in your everyday life or a business or whatever we're talking about, there is some give up. You are absolutely going to come to a place where you're giving up time, where you're giving up energy, where you're giving up financial, like you took that $650 a month. You're going to have to give up something. In that giving up of something, it's meaning that you're trying to get to another place that you're defining your success. So in that giving up, you're getting to the place that you want to be. And so I think in this generation, we have to ask ourselves, what are we willing to give up for that lifestyle that we're wanting to live with our family and our culture and our life and where that goes?
I've said it before on this podcast, but when I was about 28 or 30, a very successful man, a millionaire, I was out with this older guy and he said, "You're going to be a success in life." And I said, "What makes you think that?" He said, "I can already see you're a risk taker." And I don't know how many times I use that phrase in our family. I said, "Babe, you know what? We're going to roll the dice." Now, I'm not saying to take risks without usually the odds on your side, or you've heard God say it. You have some reason to believe that it's going to be successful more than it's not. But I have used that phrase many times, and I'll use it many times in the future. Babe, we're going to roll the dice right now.
What did you say?
No, go ahead. There's a guy, Simon Sinek. He's like more in a business guru, and he talks about, and you're talking about risk. He talks about there being a short-term game and then there being an infinite game, meaning like there's stuff that's finite, meaning like there's a beginning and there's an end. Like it starts and it goes. Like the calendar year is finite. Mm-hmm. We know that there's a January and it's going to end in December for most people,
Football
right?
Season.
Football, it's a finite season, but then there's an infinite thing where, like you talk about, Pastor, where you roll the dice. You're willing to roll the dice because you know that if it doesn't land on the other side, that there's so much more of the game to play.
Yeah.
There's so much more things happening that it's like, if it doesn't go that way, then it doesn't mean that it was a failure. It just means that there's still more game to play.
Wouldn't it be, according to most people that living by faith, according to their perspective, would be risky?
Yeah.
And we're told to do that. Doesn't the Bible teach that? Faith is the assurance and conviction of things that you don't see.
Right.
But you know in your heart that you should do it or say it or whatever.
I think the Bible,
and that's living by faith.
The Bible definitely teaches risk taking. If you think about the Sea of Galilee 2,000 years ago, Jesus walked around and he called these disciples, and some of them were fishermen, and he said, "Stop doing what you're doing right now and follow me." And they did. They dropped their nets, and that's the equivalent of walking away from a union job or a safer job, right?
And yet Jesus took a risk by calling them.
Right, that's true.
I'm betting on these guys.
That's true, and he had a pretty good. He got 11 out of 12. No, I believe he knew who Judas was too. But he when he chose those guys, I wonder what they felt. I wonder how they felt. They knew who Jesus was, at that point, and Jesus had been gaining popularity, and they're like, this guy is something, he's somebody, but they didn't really know. We know this because when we see them walking with Jesus, they still don't know who he is at the beginning.
No.
Like, it's not until halfway through that story of those guys following Jesus that Jesus looks.
Who am I?
He says, "Who do you say I am?" And Peter says, "You're the chosen."
You got it right, buddy. You got it right.
And that was like halfway. And like this was like and the rest of them were like, "Really?"
They just knew he had something they wanted.
Right.
They knew that.
They knew he had something
in their heart. Well, what they didn't know neither, it was God in their heart making them desire this.
Yeah.
And they go, whatever this is, it's so exciting. I want to be a part of it.
What's interesting, though, too, is they would have been known as almost not failures, but they would have been known as the people who didn't make it in the rabbi tradition, right?
They were flunkies.
They went to school so long, and at some point they cut you off. They say, okay,
go back to fishing business.
Thing, go back to what you know. And that's what they did. And so it's interesting to see that mentality all through the disciples' lives. And it's interesting, too, that mentality stays with them. Yes. Because when Jesus dies on the cross, Peter is out. He's out. And then Jesus comes back. He starts appearing to him over and over and over. And what does Peter do? He says, I'm just, Jesus is coming and going. I don't know what's going on. I'm just going to go fishing. I don't know what else to do. So he goes back to what he was doing before. But Jesus keeps calling him, and he keeps calling him, and he keeps calling him. And I think about that in our lives today. Mm-hmm. That's my story. Is I give up in my heart sometimes, but then God keeps calling me, and he keeps calling me.
But add to that story, and I think you'll relate to this. He went back to what he was doing before, but this time he was not successple in doing what he did before.
That's true. Yeah.
And the Lord was calling him. Now put the two together,
right?
And you've got a story.
Well, it's funny. I just one more thing, and then I'll stop. But I get discouraged, and I saw you write something on Facebook the other day, Dad, and we get discouraged. Ministry is a discouraging. You talk about today being Monday. We're do this on day before, but after a Sunday message, there's a real letdown. There's a real
adrenaline flow is gone, and you have this thing that comes
on Sunday nights. The depression will kick in, the frustration, all these things. You're tired. And that happens over and over and over. And it is human nature to want to give up. So maybe we're speaking to somebody out there that wants to give up on God's call in their life.
That's good.
Well, what did I say in my sermon the other day? And I go by my own sermons. I gave a point in decision making. And I said, don't ever make a decision when you're in an emotional state of
tired.
Mind.
Yeah.
Don't do it.
Yeah.
Because I've wanted to quit many times when I'm tired.
What's interesting about that is you said an emotional state of mind. That could be too high or too low. Right.
Oh, that's so good. I love that we brought up too the just choosing of the disciples and just that whole social economical landscape that was happening, because you would expect the Messiah, the chosen one, to come in and the Pharisees would have expected them to be picked, like them to be the successful ones. And Jesus chose to define success as completely different. He went after the fishermen, those who were not deemed as the successful in society. And I think sometimes we might not be working the job that we want to be working. We may not be in the school that we want to be in, and our kids may not be doing this, and we might not get trips to Disneyland. But none of that matters, because when we live within Christ, He chooses us on a completely path, and it has nothing to do with the success of what the world views as success.
I wonder how many times he walked that shore before he picked them.
That's
like,
good.
I wonder how many times that he looked over and
gave him the eye, looking him over.
Yeah, and he sees Peter just working, right?
Cussing.
Peter's just in, but he's
Catch
just
no fish.
but he's full on probably into. This is my imagination working, of course. But maybe he sees Peter just full on working hard, and he's fully dedicated to what he's doing, and he's like, "That's my guy."
Did you notice he didn't choose anybody that wasn't real busy already doing something?
They were already, they were busy.
That's so important.
Do you wonder
Wow,
he chose?
that's a whole leg.
Well, there again, and this will get kind of controversial, but you don't see people turning him down. But was there somebody who turned him down?
Could have been.
And then look from afar.
I don't know. That's interesting.
And as you look from afar, you may think, oh, wow. But I think as Jesus' purpose was to find people who are willing to follow.
That's true.
Willing to take a risk. Because I'm out there and I come from a different perspective than all of you guys. Because I remember being a heathen and moving to LA when I was 18 years old. Graduated high school 2 weeks. Moved to, I lived on 111th and Hawthorne. It's not even there anymore, Inglewood. And I remember success for me then was to wake up the next day because I didn't have a job, and all I knew how to do was go to the gym, and I did.
That's what you did.
And then 6 months later, I was homeless.
Yeah.
Because the gym guys go, hey Tom, if you want to stay at the gym, you got a shower here, you can cook here, you don't need to live in Inglewood, and you can work out before anybody gets here. And I was like,
that's the reason leg guy's always at my gym attached me. He lives there.
but I'm just saying, but when that was offered to me and somebody said, well, you're homeless, I go, yeah, but I still had a home. I worked out in the gym, I ate in the gym, and I did my business with the gym. But it wasn't. But my level of success wasn't in any of that.
So let me throw a kink in the system here. Let me just for thought process. And I think
let me finish my thought, because I think success might be sometimes age appropriate. I think about my wife when she comes home, and I see, what does a kindergartner think? They come to school, they go home. That's success. I was at school today, and what do I learn? My wife and I have been really philosophical with education lately, and so I think success comes with different seasons. Mm-hmm. What do you consider success? Mm-hmm. And then I remember getting married and having a great career. Then I got a divorce. I mean, so I think there's things that you go up and down in with success, and I think sometimes it's how you merit it. I think it becomes in the eye of the person living it too.
So let me go back to the idea of you going to the gym. Okay, you show up, you go to the gym, you work out, and it got you somewhere. Dad, when you first started doing ministry, you just showed up, right? You showed up, and it got you somewhere. Vince, you've done this all your life. You just show up and it gets you somewhere, right? What is this mentality? How are we missing this mentality with the young people today? Because I don't see this mentality with younger people. I see this mentality of, like, if you talk to kids in elementary school and you ask them, what do you want to be when you grow up? They say, I want to be a famous YouTuber, or I want to be this or that, right? Mm-hmm. But they don't know what it takes. They don't understand the work ethic. Like, what are we going to do? I guess my question would be, what are we going to do to communicate to the younger generation and show them that you have to show up and you have to put the work in? I
think we're at a stage of life too where right now especially we have so few role models for these kids to look up to. There's so few people that are respected enough by these young people that they can look up to them and find out how they did it.
That's interesting, though. That's interesting. Okay. Let me stop there for a second. Because if you work really hard and you become successful, and let's say you become rich because you're successful, okay? You have all this money. Usually these young kids don't really look up to rich people as the standard. They like they see them and they say, I don't want to be like that. That guy's a jerk. That guy drives a sports car. That guy. But then they look up to these people who have followers as a different kind of avenue of success. It's really interesting.
If you go back to even generations, they're going to go and say, I don't want to do what my mom and dad did.
Yeah.
And I think this generation is going back and they see the last generation working and putting 60, 80 hours in. They're like, and missing out time with them. And they're like going, I don't want to do that.
Right.
I'll work my 40 hours, but then I'm going to reinvest my human equity into something else.
Yeah.
Maybe a social issue, maybe a cause, because they just saw it maybe not getting them to where they want to be. Maybe it got parents.
Right.
It's one of those things where we all have to look back at it. I didn't want to be my mom and dad.
Yeah.
And I wanted to do it differently, but I knew hard work ethics. Now I see as my kids are growing up, they're working hard, but they're also spending their time on some things that maybe we didn't spend time on. Now they're holding more value in that.
Can I say, without putting everybody in a box, on the whole, I've never seen a more confused younger generation, and I think it's for many different reasons. But let me give you a couple things that have driven me crazy this last week. On Newsfeed, this world's gone crazy. There was an article just yesterday, or was it today? It said, science says teens need more sleep. So why is it so hard to start school later?
Mm-hmm.
Hold on, but I think you got to be kidding me. I look at this article, you got to be kidding me.
Why? Why?
It went on, listen to me. It went on, it says all teenagers, now they use the word all.
Okay.
I'm all over this. All teenagers have this shift in their brain that causes them to not feel sleepy until 10:45 or 11. That is baloney.
I agree.
You know what? You know why they can't go to sleep 10:45 to 11?
They're on their cell
They got
phones.
caffeine. They're on their cell phones. They have not been taught properly. This is not. And the guy went on, I can't believe it, to say this is scientific. This is scientific. No, they've been raised in a generation. I was in Starbucks the other day, and I went to the girl and I looked at my clock, see what time it was, and I said, do you have anything decaffeinated? She said, why'd you look at your clock? I said, because I'll be awake all night. She said, wait, caffeine keeps you awake?
No way.
Yeah, it keeps you awake. I can never go to sleep till 1 a.m, and I drink caffeine up to 8 or 9. Yeah, and I go, there's your problem.
Wow.
Now let me feed off another art. I mean, this is insane. These kids have parents aren't taking their saying you can't look at cell phones after 9 or whatever.
Right.
We know cell phones keep you awake. Here's another article last week. The big lie about free will. The Stanford scientist has spent decades researching human nature. He believes that virtually every choice we make is beyond our self-control because we have no will. And I'm looking at all these insane, and I can go to the Bible and show you 20 verses, 30 that disagree with that. The younger generation, a lot of them, not all of them, I don't want to put them all in the same box, stereotype them.
Right.
But a lot of them at large, I would have to agree, they're very confused because they have not had the role model. I mean, let's face it, the Bible says there was a generation that grew up that didn't even know God.
Yeah.
And I think we're on the verge of that generation right now. We're there because the generation have not passed it down. We have, but the most of them out there have not passed down what I would call real Christianity.
I think that's an issue just at society at large, though. And like I love what Tom said earlier. We have put so much emphasis on how important it is for for parents to go out into the workplace and work 40 hours. I said 40. It does sound like I said a bad word. 40 hours. I didn't say 40 but I meant 40 hours. But
Said
to work
it again.
But 40 out. But to basically work 40 hours a week. both parents to have 2 jobs to grind in. The last generation's version of success was to get as much money as you have, own a house, own a car, do all these things, and you would be good. The problem is they did that at the devastation of the kids that were at home, and so now you have this whole generation
They wanted to live the van life.
They wanted to live all these different. So now you have this whole generation that is like, I don't want to do that anymore, and so they're bucking that whole system. But the problem is now you have these parents now that are not in the home. They're not raising their kids. They're disconnected. And they're not, like you said, they're not like my kids go, and I'm not saying this has nothing to do with the way that I'm doing it. And we can do a whole podcast on the way that I do it versus the way you do it or whatever. We actually talked about that. But my kids go to bed gracefully at 8 o'clock. All of them.
That is
I have 2 teenagers. And sometimes they'll say, hey, Dad, I want to finish this thing. Can I? Of course, like 8:30, 9 o'clock, go ahead. But like after that, we got to go to bed. Okay, guys? Okay, cool. So there's days that there's grace. But my kids are like, yes, we'll go to bed. And they have no problem going. And guess what? They wake up bright and early. They have energy for the day. Now, do I do that all the time? They always say, Dad, you don't go to bed till like 11 o'clock at night. That's true. Sometimes I don't. Because I have set
That's
myself
your time,
up.
though.
Well, I've also, and I told them, I said, I have a bad habit. I'm trying to break it. I said, I try to go to bed early and earlier and earlier every year. I said, I promise I will. I think that's just also just getting older, becoming an older man. I'm like, I need to go to bed.
That was hard to say, wasn't it?
I need to go to bed earlier, but it's just the way that we decided to live. So going back to just success, like, if you're defining success as going out and working and having as much money and doing, but at the devastation of not being at your home with your kids and giving them good standards to live by,
Right.
then that's not success.
That is music to my ears, because I said this very thing to Debbie. Where are the parents that's teaching their high school kids, we go to bed at a certain time, da-da-da-da-da. You know, I think society at large might define success as a vacation home, a huge house, a nice car, a boat in the garage. I said in a sermon, a few weeks ago, that I had some goals in life, and mine was to have a great walk with God, have a great marriage, healthy body, great kids that love God, and financial security. That was what I wanted. And by God's grace, I have been able to a certain degree achieve all those. And that was my idea of success. See, what was the old saying? That you can climb a ladder of success only to find out that the ladder's leaning against the wrong wall after you get to the top. Mm-hmm. And that would be very, very sad.
So another reason I think that you talked about the kids being confused, right? This generation.
Oh, I think there's no doubt about it.
Well, one of the biggest aspects, or one of the biggest factors for that, is social media, because we live in the complaining generation. So you see all these people complaining about, like, you look at, if you see somebody who is a school teacher, right, and they're on social media complaining, right, which happens,
right,
or somebody who sells cars, or somebody who works in the oil field business. Those are all fine jobs, right? Well, they're on there complaining about their lives, right? So then kids see that, they connect the two, and they think, well, that person's unhappy, so why would I want to do that?
It's all about access, though, because and that's the thing is, like, and I'm not sitting on a high horse and saying like this or that. Like, I have a kid that's a little bit older now. He's like 16, and he's just like, hey, Dad, my friend has an Instagram. Can I have an Instagram? I'm like, well, what do you want to do with it? What's the point? Like, and he's like, okay, like, we want to share funny videos. Okay, like, that's fine, but do you need to have an account where you post and you read and stuff? No. Okay, well, then do you need it? No. So it's like, for me, it's like, my kids, like, so my daughter, she was like, I need a TikTok or whatever. I'm like, no, you're not gonna have that. And if you don't want to have that, then I'll just take your phone. And some parents will be like, well, you're not cool, man. Like, all the kids are on TikTok. Doesn't matter. Like, I don't care. Like, because I know that if I just let my kids just go willy-nilly with the free world, that's what's on, that's social media, then I am setting them up for failure. In their mind, they're successful if they get to be on these social platforms. They're excited, like you said, but I know long-term, it's going to be bad for them.
Well, it's like this. It's like in the 80s, they talked about, this comedian was talking in the 80s about the 80s the other day. And he said, in the 80s, you got whatever soda and whatever candy you wanted. Your parents, which we didn't, but like, kids would they would always have candy. Yeah. They would always have candy on them. And they grow up and they're upset with their parents for giving them candy. Right. Is this generation going to grow up and being upset with their parents for allowing them to have a phone?
But Josh, here's the thing too.
Or all that access.
I'm redundant. I believe with all of my heart the devil is in charge. He's trying to at least be in charge of the world today. He's calling the shots. And somehow he has used social media, everything else, to convince the younger generation that probably most of the people with the real wisdom and knowledge are old-fashioned and out of sync. That they're not with it anymore. Times have changed. And I have young people trying to tell me how to run a church. And they have no life experience at all. Zero. But they've been convinced because of Googling and AI and everything else that they know how the world operates. But I do think that because of a lot of us in the older generation made a lot of mistakes, the devil himself has manipulated that and made us look totally out of sync, so they will listen to us about nothing. And I believe the older generation still has a lot to say to us. Yeah. As I said in my sermon the other day, don't throw out everything the old Pentecostal people believed in and did. A lot of the stuff, it was kind of dumb, and maybe they had not well thought through. Mm-hmm. But I think the devil has convinced a lot. I keep saying that because there's a lot of young people right now are very wise for their age.
Yeah.
And they've been raised right and on and on. I'm not talking to them. I'm talking about at large. There's a different thought process.
I think generationally too, I like what you said. I think that every generation is going to make mistakes because we're all learning.
Yes,
and I think that those generations have to go back and say, we did do it wrong, and this is where we were. But that comes back to, like you said, that wisdom and learning. Because if the generation before us sits on their high horse and says, well, we just did it right and you're doing it completely wrong, then that younger generation is going to buck that and say, no, like you've just misunderstood the way that we were trying to live our lives. Going back to what we talked about, the generation, my parents' generation, they worked, and I'm grateful for, they worked so much that going back, they didn't parent, I didn't, my parents were not completely active in my life. They kind of said, go for it, do whatever you wanted, but we got to go to work. And that was important to them because they wanted to make sure that we had a house and all, and I appreciate all that. But if they would have just took the moment and said, stuff isn't important, but you're more important, and we would have lived a less resourceful life, which I didn't live a super resourceful life to begin with, that would have changed some trajectory. I would have learned a lot more stuff when I was younger versus when I'm learning them now when I'm older. So I know I'm making mistakes with my kids now, and I make mistakes with my kids, and I have to go back and say that was wrong. I messed up, and being able to say I didn't see that the way I saw it today, you know. And so I think that's a big part.
Every parent will have their day when their kids get older and say, you messed up. They're going to say that about even the best parents.
Sure. Yeah.
And so anyway, let's go back to what we were saying. Another principle I wrote down about successful people is they have a passion for what they do, and that's kind of redundant. For example, Josh, you have a real passion for mental health and things that have to do with that. I think we have a whole podcast this they can look up. But Mark Twain said that the two most important days in anyone's life is first the day they were born, and secondly, the day when they found out why they were born. In a perfect world, your career will match your passion in life. In the perfect world, it doesn't always have, but in the perfect world, if we had it our way, your career would match your passion. I am blessed that the two have intersected.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that's, I do believe life changes. And one of the things that I've been excited about is I've been able to have 3 careers going into a fourth and a fifth. And I've had some level of success being able to merit it in each one. And as you look back, I get excited because you've taught us, Pastor, that as you do have purpose fuels that passion. And I think sometimes those purposes will take maybe a turnoff, especially after you have a profession. And my first profession ended because of injuries. My second profession I had was because of education, but it ended because I fell in love with Jesus. And this season of profession is going to end because I'll be moving into falling in love with Jesus, but in a different vein. And so I do believe, people can be out there. I mean, my wife and I are pretty excited about a purpose when we have grandkids. I know my kids my son-in-law and daughter are practicing that. They haven't given us grandkids yet, but I'm excited about that life, and that purpose will give me passion. So I think as people find that purpose, and it could be something as your age or circumstances keep taking you off in certain things, once you find that purpose, you can have a passion about it. I love our friend Mike Green. Mike lost his arm in Afghanistan, and Mike has had such a crazy influence on other people, veterans' lives and people with disabilities' lives. He was telling me the other day on Friday that losing his appendage, his right hand, has given him so much of an appreciation for life because he was right-handed dominant. So now he writes with his left hand, but he didn't realize how much his left brain thinking affected his right hand operating. So he's learned how to do all of it differently, but that was a circumstance of life. He went into the military, never thought about losing an appendage, lost an appendage, but now has a purpose to help other people who have a difficulty in life. He went ahead and got a master's in counseling. So he's been able to kind of shift into something new, if that makes any sense or not.
Yeah, no, it's good.
It's you mentioned that I have a passion for mental health. I actually don't. I have a passion for seeing people flourish and seeing people be
But what's the
happy.
purpose of that, Josh?
Well, that's the
'Cause-
thing is the mental health stuff is important because it's a barrier. It's a huge barrier. It's not just a barrier. It keeps you from even seeing what could be. And I think that's where I have a passion to help people understand that is a barrier, and you can actually get to where, at least, I don't know. I don't know if you ever get to where you want to be, but you get further down the road.
Yeah.
Well,
right?
let me say this, because I just saw your follow on an event that I had. And Rick was there, and he said, "Tom, how'd you get into this? Because it's mental health for first responders."
Sure.
And I said, "Well, I have a passion or a purpose in seeing people get healed in the ministry, and wherever they're at. I see them getting healed. And a vehicle has been using clinicians who are professional in helping these people get healed. My purpose in that is to help raise money and awareness." And be able to channel that into the people's lives who can. So I get passionate about that because I see the healing influence that they have. So that's my purpose, is my end goal.
I love what you said, Josh, about further down the road, because I think all successful people have in common that when they get further down the road, that road will never stop for them. Because you get further down the road and you go, wait, I can take this further. Then you get further down the road and then you're like, I can take this further. So you're right. It doesn't have to do with being content. I think it just has to do with drive, because, and I know you've done so much in your life, Pastor Ron, and it's funny because your road is not ending. Like you don't just say, "Oh, I'm done. I've finished." You can see further down the road still.
I can't quit till I die.
Right.
But I think with going what Tom said and everybody else, even for these first responders, I think I could probably say for all of us that maybe our mainline passion is similar to what I have. I figured out how to have a relationship with God. And that was my burning purpose in life now. No matter what I'm doing, when you sum it up, somewhere along the line, I want everyone to have that. I figured it out. I figured out how to have a relationship with God. And that just put me on fire. See, also Mark Twain said, and you've heard it before, find your passion and you'll never work a day in your life. For most people, I think their driving passion in life is to make money.
Yeah.
Is to make money. Majority probably people out there. And that is so lame, because I have a perspective no one else has. No, I shouldn't say no one. Tom probably has it, and you guys will get it. But 50 years of doing funerals, time after time after time, I see grown kids come up and say, my dad or my mom always had time for me. They were at every game. When I wanted to play catch, they were never once have I heard them say they made all this money. They had a beach house for us. I've never heard that said. They had time for me. They were there. They understood me. They cried with me. They prayed with me. It's redundant.
Pastor, this takes me to a place that I really have been digging into lately, the 80-20 rule. That 20% of your energy is spent on the 100% of your success. The 80%, I think about you, Pastor, you're in the pulpit on Sundays right now, but 80% of your energy goes into stuff that doesn't affect that pulpit ministry.
Oh gosh, yes.
But if you could spend 80% of your time there, how much more success would you have? And so people are, I keep talking about people is like, do as much as you can to get that 20%, expand that 20%. Because, I think of my wife. My wife is an educator, and she does a great job in it, and she's got vision with education, but she spends 80% of her time in disciplining students, talking to teachers, talking to parents, but it's required, talking to her bosses. Right. But if you could spend that if she could take that 20% and expand it, how much more productive she will be. Sure. But that leads back to, like you said, Pastor, finding that and then starting to dig in on that 20%.
Yeah, that's such a good point, Tom. Very well put. I agree. We all fall, prey to that thing. But I want to say something else too. And I didn't even have this down in my notes. But success is very often has to be intentional to a degree too. I was just thinking, I was talking with your mother yesterday. We went to church years ago in Oregon. We were on vacation. And this dude came out and he preached his sermon for about 45 minutes. As we were going home, Debbie said, what did you get from today's sermon? I said, not very much at all. But I said, the dude was so passionate and on fire, I would go back again next week if I was in this area. I love that. For example, yesterday, I told 2 real goofy jokes. Now, there's going to be a certain segment of young people going, oh, man, that's so goofy. I did it intentionally. What do you mean? Success is intentional to a certain degree. I knew that if I told goofy jokes, if I laugh at myself, more people are going to be attracted to that than won't be, even if they're goofy. And people think, what is he doing? I don't care if they think it's funny or not. I think it's funny. I'm going to laugh at them. And I think that energy produced does more than you think. And so I think to be successful, when we're getting down to the practical elements of it now, has a lot to do with being intentional too.
Yeah.
And so I don't know where you want to go with that one. That was something I wanted to add.
There's a show have you seen that show on Netflix called Alone? It's about these people that have to survive in the wilderness.
No.
It's crazy.
Oh, Alone?
Alone, yeah. And then so they basically drop them off, and it's like, how many days can you survive? You can take 10 things, and it's like, how many things? And you can't take the obvious things like a gun and all this stuff.
Right.
And right. You can't take the complete obvious things. And so, anyways, but they have to be very intentional, because it's like you'll see some people spending a lot of time trying to build their house up and make it epic so that the snow's gonna come, and then they waste all this caloric energy, and then they're all of a sudden they're out because they starved to death. And then you have some people over here. Like literally, they're like bring medical teams in for them, right? And then you have these other people that all they do is they hunt. But they have no cover and they freeze, right? And so they have to be caloric. But it's the people that are very intentional. They figure out how much caloric, and so they know, they go in with the plan. They know exactly what they need to do, and then they implement that plan. Whether it gets hard or not, they stick with the plan, and those are the people that win. So that's super interesting.
To the plan.
I have a perfect transition to that, because you always know what to do. I think we always know deep down, but we rarely think about it correctly. Like, the path to success is not what you think you should do. It's always what you know you ought to do. There's a difference. Like, sometimes if I'm hungry, right, first thing I think of, Tom, is cake. Right?
Ice cream.
I think of cake and ice cream. That's not going to satisfy me, right? If I'm thinking about how to kill some time, the first thing I think about is sitting on the couch and watching TV. It's not working out, but I know
that's what works.
The right things to do. I know that I should eat a salad or eat some, lean meats, and then I know I should work out. I know what to do, but it's not always what I think to do. And so the intentionality is being committed to what you know you ought to do. And
that leads me to a point, but I'm going to let Tom talk first. You led me to a point there.
It's like a teeter-totter, isn't it? You can go back and forth. But I do believe the success that we're talking about is found in the balance.
Yeah, balance is a good word.
Yeah, it's finding that way to know you got to go to work in the morning. Yeah. You got to go work hard. You got to go be productive. But then you got to know when to shut that off and go be with the kids. So I love the stages Vince is in, and I lived through him and his son. Huntington, because I asked him, so how did Huntington do in swimming, right?
Yeah.
So how did he do this week? I actually had an article that I showed Vince one time because I was really excited about it. I saw it in the newspaper, and Vince goes, that was an old article.
Yeah, I was like, that's not.
but I was like, man, I saw an article. So how the hell Vince's son did, because I'm not in that stage. But it's that balance that we, like you said, you have to do. Mm-hmm. I love the fact that you want to ride, and Romy went on the ride.
Yeah,
that's cool. I mean, it's a success.
What I didn't tell you is when she got off, she said, I am never doing that again.
But she did.
I did not like that.
She had experience.
Funny. But it was fun. She will do it again.
Well, it's funny because I tell you, Tessa was like her. Tessa never liked roller coasters. Yeah. She never liked scary rides.
Right.
So they are more alike. But nowadays she loves them.
Yeah. I was wondering how Romy did with that. I really was. But you guys lead me right into another point I'd written down today.
Well, let me tell you one more thing before you get into it, for the ride. You get off and you see the pictures.
Yeah.
You could see Ashley, you could see Olive, you could see me, and there was nobody there in the seat where Romy was because she was so little.
It just says go. Oh,
I'm surprised they let her ride it. Don't you have to have a height requirement or something?
Barely tall enough.
You know what?
Standing on her tippy toes, right?
But you guys led me to the thing that successful people cultivate good habits. Without discipline, you will never, never, never succeed. Again, I know Tom knows this all too well. But I get myself up usually at 5 o'clock in the morning. No one makes me get up. I get up because I know if I don't go to the gym early and get some stuff done, I won't get it done. When that alarm goes off, today was no exception. It went off at 5 o'clock, and I sit there going, do I really want to do this? No one's making me. I'm not going to be fired or anything else. But you know what? Without discipline, I'm telling you, this is huge.
It is.
You have to have discipline. You know why a lot of people aren't business leaders out there today is because they have not developed discipline. They can't be self-motivated. They won't get up early unless somebody holds a gun to their head and makes them get up early. You have to be self-motivated. You have to push yourself.
I'm starting to wake up earlier, working out, do the whole thing. I finally got fat enough to where I want to do something about it, and because it takes that, you got to get to that point, right?
Purpose.
Yeah, but what I'm learning is the importance of a evening routine just as much as a morning routine. Like you have to, decide you're gonna brush your teeth by a certain time, that you're
Yes.
gonna be in bed, that you're gonna turn the device off. All that stuff matters.
Right.
They call that sleep
Adulting?
Yeah, adulting. Right.
Well,
exactly.
I always say that a nighttime guy can screw up morning guy real easy.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're right.
Tom, I've always been this way. I wake up at night. I do. I'm like the
Well,
I'm like the
I wanted to
teenager.
ask your dad. This week we've had time change, so you probably got up an hour earlier.
I'm going by the old time yet.
Yeah.
I do that every year. It'll last for 2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah.
I'm going by the old time.
I did. I mean, I showed up at the restaurant today at the lunch place,
And that's
at
a rebel.
10 o'clock, and I was like, "Why isn't it open?"
You guys are rebels. You just said, forget time change. I'm going by the old time.
Let me ask you this.
My animals, you know what it is? But the animals don't have time change. So
do not.
I got a cat that will sit there, and the cat's like, "Oh,
Ready to eat.
this is nonsense." My stomach is telling me what time it is.
Yeah.
What role do good friends play in success?
Oh, man.
I had a saying the other day just came to my mind. You will never know a bad friend until you have a good friend. And I look at Tom here on my left and Mike Maggard yesterday. These are such quality guys that at some point in time, I start comparing them to what I thought was friends out there. And I go, those people I thought were friends can't even measure up to the quality of these people. Because, and I'm looking at a sermon on friends, because good friends are hard to find, and real good ones, I mean, they're such a help to you being successful. I went to Mike Maggard yesterday, and he was in the back. And he's now retired as CPA, one of the best around. And I said, you know what? I had something I wanted to ask you, but you're retired. You've been on vacation. I didn't want to bother you. He took the time and dotted all the lines for me and crossed all the T's for me. And so I think that without having good friends that will stand by you, encourage you, guys you can go to ask for advice, I'm not so sure I can be as successful as I want to be without them.
Pastor, I agree so much, and you'll never know. And I you've been an important role in my life always. But when I had my heart issue, you were always there, and you're like, "Tom, you'll be okay." And now in my mind, I wasn't like sure that was going to happen. I thought I was bulletproof, and I wasn't okay. But it was good to have that there. And trust in it too, because you have a lot of friends you can't put trust in, right?
Oh, yes, you do. You learn the hard way.
But when somebody's out there going, "No, you'll be okay," and you trust them, you're like, "Well, they wouldn't just tell me that just to make me feel good," But I'm saying that is so important. What do they say? You're the product of the 5 people that you're around.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And so it's so important that you want those friends. And the Bible says, that a friend is there in a time of need.
So that's good, Tom. That's really true.
Why are you holding a golf ball?
Why am I holding a golf
It's
ball?
a stress reliever, I think,
It
today.
is a stress reliever for me.
Keep playing with
A
that.
bright green golf
I want
ball.
one now. I watched him do it. And
So this is a little trick for me, actually. So this golf ball helps me stay mindful. It helps me stay present. It helps me not mind wander. I know it's a weird thing, but they say I have a problem with daydreaming and
Really?
mind wandering. And
Really?
so, yeah, right. Yeah, exactly.
I've sitting there playing the ink pen the whole time.
And so this keeps me engaged, actually.
My ink pen does the same thing.
Yeah, it's interesting. Anyway, so what I was gonna say is it doesn't have to do the friend thing necessarily, but with this Disneyland trip, it was funny because we went all the way down there and did the whole thing, and we came back, and my wife said, "Hey, I can't find the girls' shoes." And I said, okay, well, I don't know where my shoes are either. And she said, me neither. So we had a whole bag of shoes that we left in the hotel down in Disneyland. That's about a 2.5 hour, 3 hour drive.
No.
So, dropped my ball. So I had to turn around the next day. I'm dead tired. And I had to drive all the way down there and pick up this bag of shoes and come back.
And they were there.
They were there.
Wow.
Thank God for that. But I had some time on my hands. And so I listened to a podcast. And I listened to a podcast with Joe Rogan and the most successful person in the United States, Elon Musk.
Yes.
And
great podcast.
It was a good podcast.
It was a good
So you heard
podcast.
it too. So it was on Halloween and they were just hanging out and they were goofing off, you know? And I learned a couple things from that podcast. One, you can have fun and be successful. You can still enjoy life and be successful.
Yeah.
The second thing I learned is there were a couple things where Joe Rogan was talking about the Cybertruck that Elon drove in. And Elon was talking about how it was bulletproof.
Yeah.
And Joe Rogan said, I bet you I can shoot a bow and arrow, and I bet you I can stick it through. And Elon said, I bet you can't. I'll bet you $1. And he was like, let's do it right now. So they walk out, and Joe Rogan takes his 80-pound bow and shoots this thing.
Oh, no.
And barely dents it, right?
Oh, no.
It wrecks the arrow, tears up the arrow.
What?
Right? Yeah,
But,
it was crazy.
didn't
An
you know that would be
80-pound
the
pull?
results? You knew that would happen.
No way.
Right.
80-pound pole.
80-pound
Elon
pull.
was pretty positive.
Oh, yeah.
Elon, he won it all.
Well, we got to go back, though. There's some history there because they went on stage. No.
Get us off track.
Elon, no, it's not on track. Elon, because you can talk about success and failure in there. Elon Musk went on stage and said his Cybertruck's bulletproof.
Yeah.
And the bricks won't go through the window. And he threw a brick and it went right through the window. It was like infamous and people laughed.
It was because it hit the window.
Right.
That's what it was. So the windows, they can't be bulletproof because then you couldn't roll them down, I guess. Anyway,
Oh, okay. So they went back on the bulletproof
I
windows.
learned all this while driving.
Okay, perfect.
Because I forgot shoes. But what was interesting is another part where Joe Rogan's talking about a pizza he likes, and Elon Musk is like, let's order it right now. So Elon is the type of guy who does things in the moment. He's like, let's do it right now. Like when he has an idea, he's like, let's do
He's
it right
a
now.
risk taker.
He's a risk taker, but he just does it right away. And so I was thinking about that in terms of success. And I was thinking, like, these guys, they don't mess around. They don't say, well, maybe someday we'll do that. They do it right then and there.
And they
So
got
it's
the
like,
money too. Let's go to the moon. Okay.
yeah, right.
And they have the money
highly
too,
successful. Now, are those people, the best people to be around 24/7? Maybe not. That might stress some people out that are around them. But I learned that. But going back to the prior comment is the fact that you can still enjoy life and be successful. In fact, I would say that is
part of success.
right?
Yes,
it is.
It is
Yeah.
just enjoying
I mean,
life.
again, I don't work a day in my life because I love what I'm doing. But I want to go to another point or two before we get off the air today. I think successful people aren't afraid to start small. You have to start somewhere.
Yeah.
I've seen this. If I've seen it one time, I've seen it 100 times. A couch potato that's not working, a guy's not working, and he's waiting for a supervisor job to be offered to him.
Yep.
Or a job where I'll make $50, $60 an hour.
Yeah.
Afraid to start small. In a joking way, I've said it for years. Why don't you just go to work for Taco Bell? Be a taco boy. Flip hamburgers with the goal that someday I'm going to run this joint. I'm going to
Right.
have a string of these. You have to be willing to start small. Didn't we all start small?
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, this church today, people walk in, see the first thing they see is the 3,400 seat sanctuary, and they go, "Wow." Well, we started with a Quonset hut with 10 teenagers. We weren't afraid of starting small. So I don't know who you are today or what kind of dream you have, but if you'll just get the train on the tracks and not be afraid to start small, if you really believe in that thing you're doing, it will grow. The Bible says, "Be faithful in small things; I'll give you larger."
I'll
You know,
add-
Pastor, doesn't that principle keep?
Repeating itself.
Yes, because I do believe as you start over again, you've got to start at the bottom. You've got to work hard. It takes that
Yeah.
same effort. It takes that same amount of energy, and as you develop the skills, you can apply them to another trade.
Well, we realized in this podcast, I was told one time when I was on the radio, we're 420 cities, Tom, or whatever, on the radio
At
all
least.
across the United States. And someone told me, when I first started on the radio, I didn't want to, and someone told me, you need to be on the radio, you need to be on the radio. Radio works for some people it doesn't. I think it's going to work for you. And they told me, I'll never forget it. This was decades ago. Usually you have to stay on the radio 5 years in a row before it starts taking off.
It's still
That's
true
still
today.
kind of the rule.
Yeah.
And so we're only on this for a little over a year. So if we want this thing to be successful, we got to stick around
Right.
and discipline ourselves. So
That's good.
anyway, I mean, we're coming near the end. I don't know what you guys want to say before we get off today, but
You know, one of the things that I think is people quit. And we always say, don't go 99 yards and put the football down. You got to finish.
Resilient.
I mean, sometimes it takes a little more effort to cross that finish line than it does to get the 99 yards to there. And so being able to see that purpose, to develop that passion, and then not quit.
Amen.
And stick to it. What do you call it, Pastor? Stick-to-itness?
Stick-to-itiveness.
And as you stick to it, you will reap the rewards. Because the Bible says that, right?
Tom, it does.
It says, you're going to reap like you sow, right? So if you're going to be sowing hard, you're going to be able to reap.
Tom, I've
hard.
got it. You hit the nail on the head. Resilience. The definition of resilient is the capacity to withstand or to recover quickly from difficulties, to adapt. You got me into it. I never really years ago ever watched Shark Tank, but you watch. Most people they're turned down. They turn them down. And you know what they leave going? We're still going to make it. Right. We're still going to do this. We're not giving up. We have something.
That's just it too. Is I think that it's funny. I've over the years I've gotten a lot of flack because people think that I quit things a lot, but I don't. I start doing something for the purpose of practicing. Like if you were to show up on the football field on the first day of practice or the first day of game day, right? And you hadn't practiced at all, you're going to get whooped. You're going to get beat. You're going to get torn up. And so I will do things just for the practice of it. I'll do it all the time. Like I'll start things, a podcast or whatever it might be. I'll start it for the practice of it, and I will work and work and work. People underestimate how important practice is. Like you said, like 5 years before you become successful, like you have to work really hard at practicing, and then eventually the right thing is going to take off. It really is. And so like I'm constantly just looking for that right thing.
I love what Giannis said of the Milwaukee Bucks. He lost last year. They were expected to win a championship. They thought they were going to repeat, and in a press conference, they said, do you see, somebody asked him, was this season been a failure to you, and he says, no, Michael Jordan played for 15 years and he only won 6 is the 9 years of failure, just because he didn't win, just because, so definitely, you're going to do some stuff in your life, and that doesn't mean that the stuff that you deem is completely failure. That is still success. You're learning to be successful. And so you have to go down that track. You mentioned I got a deer this week, and it was funny. I was telling Tom when I came in, I was telling Tom Hollenbeck, hunting that deer the last 2 months, cause you're in hunting season. Like we've put in over 50, 60 miles of walking, treacherous terrain, California. And sometimes you don't see nothing. And it was my last day of vacation. It was Sunday. And on Saturday, Huntington's go, are we going to go, Dad? And I'm just like, I kind of want to rest, but I'm beat. I mean, I had just gone on Friday. We put 14 miles in walking on Friday. And I just said, I don't know if I have it in me. And then I just got that.
He wanted to go.
He wanted to go. And I was like, I just need to go. Like, what am I talking about? This could be the day. And so Huntington, we get in the car that morning. It's 4 a.m. Remember waking up at 4 a.m.?
Definitely.
And he goes, Dad, do you think we'll see anything today? And I'm like, what do you think I'm in the car for? What do you mean? Of course I think I'm going to see something today. I wouldn't be in the car if I didn't think I was going to see anything.
I was messing with you too.
Well, what was his reaction when you got the deer?
Oh my goodness. It was so awesome because what happened in this trip, and I'm no shade on my other friends, but you talked about going with your gut feeling, and we got walking down this trail, and it was kind of a warmer day, and there's 4 of us. And I stopped and I said, Huntington, the deer aren't here. And so our other 2 friends are like, no, there's deer down here. There's water. And I said, they're not here, guys. And so I said, do you want to come back with us? Or we're going to go this other way because I feel like in Huntington. So we walk away and I asked this and they said, no, we're going to go down here because the deer's down here. And so it's like the split of who knows where the deer's at. So we walk away and Huntington goes, Dad, if they get a deer, I'm going to be so mad at you. And I said, but I'm just telling you, I don't feel good. And so we go walking back up the ridge and sure enough, we just see these doe come out, this buck pop up, and I'm like, stand up, run over here. And so I get, we're quiet, that's a quiet hunt over there. He's over on this bottom ridge on the top, and then I thought we lost him. And all of a sudden I just hear the buck go, well, I didn't know what it was, and it just started to ridge over the next crest. And I just pulled my gun up. I just told Huntington, I said, 1, 2. And I just made a noise. They say make a noise like a meh, and it just stopped. Boom, shot right in the thing. And Huntington's
we just lost half our audience.
And all I hear,
I doubt it.
Except for PETA.
And I hear Huntington yell. We got him, Dad. We got him. And he's just so excited.
Well, the interesting thing, and I've been with Vince where he's gotten lucky fishing and all these other things. Optimism kind of pushes you that extra mile, right? It makes you go that extra mile. It makes you do the things that you might not do if you were pessimist about it,
I'm still trying to figure this out. I watch Price is Right in the morning if I have a late breakfast or whatever, or a shake. And it seems like the person that's ultra optimistic always gets the dollar on the spin. They always get it. For some reason, something's working for them.
I just what went through my mind is if I just would have slept in that day, we wouldn't have had that moment.
Yeah.
And it's like that, like you said, just taking that, getting that resilience built in. You say we can do one more.
I think the optimistic person too, like goes with their gut a lot more. Like they like that gut feeling. But then the pessimistic person probably says, "Nah, that's not it," and they kind of check themselves a little bit. And they always say that your gut feeling is probably more likely to be correct.
Well, I always tell people you don't want to go fishing with me, and you know this about me because I'll burn it. Like I'm like, there's fish in this next hole. There's fish, and I will take somebody from sunrise to sunset looking for fish. You know,
Well, Vince, that's why you're a young man after my own heart. I've chosen to work close to Vince. I've said it before, and I will say it probably forever. I've never seen a young man with the work ethics that he
Thank you.
has. Strong work ethics. And that's why I enjoy working with you, because I don't want to use my time foolishly. And because I'm that way too. My wife tells you, once I lay my hands to the plow, I don't give up very easily, at least in my younger years. I'm getting a little older now. But the bottom line is, you know, you can't give up. Once you feel you're supposed to do something, that it's God's will. And this is important, this resilience, because nothing of value is ever going to go flawlessly. Never. And sometimes you have to find something in the middle to hang on to in the middle of the storm. And so once you feel something's God's will, obviously, and I wanted people to tweak this to make it applicable to their own world at the beginning of the podcast, whether that's being a good parent, a good employee, whatever. You must be resilient at what you do. And you can't give up once you feel you're supposed to do something. So I don't know how you want to end this thing, but I mean, I got a lot more to talk about, but I always do.
Well, we'll just have to come back next week and fill some of that stuff in.
Yeah, learn from your mistakes. We want to talk about all that. So I just am glad we're back, and I hope we didn't lose many listeners because, you know, we have to every once in a while take a break because two of the guys were on vacation, and I was very busy with some other things, and we just didn't have time to do this. So hopefully they'll all be back, and maybe you can find a way to really push this podcast, let everybody know we're back.
Yep, we will, for sure.
And so
all right, guys. Well,
we
thank
love you guys.
Thanks for listening.
Yeah, God bless.